Hey everybody, this is Nora and you're watching Nora and Lori's Keto and Health. I want to thank you for joining in with me today. I am going to be doing a versus battle. Why? Because I've been busy in the kitchen this week. I have been coming up and trying new recipes for Thanksgiving because I'm determined my Thanksgiving is going to be keto-fied. Yes, my carbs are going to be higher, but at least they're going to be keto carbs, and I should not derail my progress because I am doing really well on my journey. So I did a roll recipe. It is actually a clover leaf roll, and the recipe could be made with either almond flour or coconut flour, and there's differences in these rolls. Obviously, the coconut flour is not as puffy as the almond flour. Exact same ingredients, just different flours. And then, and they taste differently and their textures are different. So I thought, why not do a versus battle? Because a lot of people who come into keto, they hear that they can cook with both. But when would you want to use one flour over the other? And because most flours call for almond flour. But what if you're allergic to nuts? Your only other choice is going to be coconut flour. But then there's some people who are allergic to coconuts too. And I'm going to be honest with you, coconut does affect the taste of the products that you use it in. So I thought, what could we get into? And I come up with some ideas. So let's jump into this versus battle. All right, so I have our rules here, and I have them here for a close-up so that we can discuss some of my talking points here. We are going to talk about the different ratios of the flours used in this recipe, the cook times, the actual texture differences you can see when you break these apart, and then we're going to talk about allergies and why you may have to use one flour over the other, and then we'll end that with a taste test and how they taste and texture from the taste test. All right, so let's get into this. The first thing that we want to talk about here is the different ratios in the flours. You can see there is a size difference in between the two flours, coconut flour, almond flour. And a lot of that just comes down to almond flour is not as absorbent as coconut flour. So you naturally use less flour for the coconut than you do with the almond flour. Now the cook times for these two were exactly the same. These are made out of a fathead dough, so that, cheese is your major component here. So the cook times was the same. But you can see that the almond flour has got a nice brown color to them. This one's probably got the nicest brown color to it. I just didn't want to cook it too much because when coconut flour becomes overdone, it becomes rather chewy. So, and a lot of the reason for the color differences is just there's a color difference in the flours itself. Almond flour is a little darker. It browns up a lot more easier than the coconut flour does. So at the 20 minutes, the almond flour is looking more like a roll that you would expect to see. Now, as far as texture goes, I do have these broken apart here for you. You can see that, yeah, it's airy, but that's also where there was the 3 rolls together. But it is, as you would expect with almond flour, dense. Very, very dense. And that's just kind of the way almond flour is. This one is a lot more airier. You can just see it's not as dense. And it's lighter and fluffier. Another thing to kind of watch is like this. You see that? It's springy to the touch. You can just tell it's not as dense. And then when I do it to this one, you got some spring, but you can just you can tell there's such a difference. There's resistance there. So it's got some spring to it, but you can tell it's just got a lot of density to it. Another thing to consider is almond flour, because you have to use more, is usually more carbs. Like one roll is 4 carbs for the almond flour, and where the coconut one is 2 carbs. So you got to think about that aspect too when you're doing keto or low carb. Carbs matter, and sometimes when you want to have some of these special things, you have to allocate some of your carbs to be prepared for that. Now, one of the major things that's going to make you choose between almond flour and coconut flour is going to come down to allergies. Besides taste, a lot of people are allergic to nuts, and obviously almond is a nut, and so a lot of people cannot have almonds. Now, I am allergic to nuts, but I'm not allergic to an almond. Almond is not like a true nut. So I do perfectly fine with almond flour. I can't eat a lot of it. It does tend to make me hold a little water weight. Now, so if you was allergic to nuts, almond flour might be the way that you want to go. But then again, a lot of people are allergic to coconut, and then they would have to use almond flour. So there's a lot of reasons why you would use one flour over the other. But I think for me, it'll come down to the taste test. And let's get into that. Let's do that taste test. Let's put some butter on this and talk about the differences in taste and textures. Buttery good. All right, let's try these out for our taste test. Hey, I'm back for that taste test. I'm going to start out with the almond flour ones. Let me go ahead and get me a nice bite here. Very chewy. Okay, I'm going to hold my opinion on the almond flour one. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to taste the coconut flour one. Okay. You wouldn't believe the vast difference in between the two. Okay. So let's get started with the almond flour. Obviously, the texture-wise, you don't actually taste the graininess because it's a fat head dough. But you do taste that it is more dense. But it tastes more like what a normal roll would taste like. If you were wanting to slip some healthy keto foods on people who don't normally eat keto foods, I think I would do the almond flour version. They puff up bigger. They look more like a roll. They taste more like a roll. Now, the coconut flour. The very first thing that hits you is the sweetness of the coconut. So, and you dip each of these balls in Parmesan. That's how you are able to spread them apart or pull them apart. So that sweetness with the Parmesan just isn't my cup of tea. But if you were wanting to go for something that's lighter and fluffier, coconut flour would be the way to go. Don't get me wrong, I use coconut flour in my chaffles. I make a Wonder Bread chaffle. When you add the egg and the mayo to it, that you're not getting hit by that sweet taste. So coconut flour has its place. But we are talking about Clover rolls. Pull apart Clover rolls. And to me, the almond flour wins. The coconut flour one also seems to be a little bit more drier than what the almond flour is. And that's what coconut flour is notorious for, is being very absorbent. That's why you use less. And the almond flour one is just not as dry. It represents more a true roll. Consistency is maybe not, it's a little thicker than what a roll is, but taste and looks more like a roll. And I would use the almond flour. I would not use coconut flour again in rolls like this unless I was going maybe for like a Hawaiian sweet roll or something like that, or making Wonder Bread, something like that. Yeah, I would use the coconut flour in it. So yeah, that is my thoughts on that. So the almond flour definitely wins this battle this time when it comes to being in a roll form. I have done another versus battle, and I have more planned for you, but I already did a versus battle on Rebel ice cream versus Keto pint, both of which that can be purchased at Walmart. I broke down some of the things like price per serving, how many servings, what the carbs were. I'm not going to give it all away because I have a whole video on it that you can watch, and I'm going to put that in the end card at the very end of the video so that you can click on that and watch and see what happened with that versus battle. My motto is, your journey begins with you. Don't overcomplicate keto, because if you do, you will never take that first step and you'll never start your journey. So thank you for tuning in. If you like these type of videos, please like these videos, leave a comment, and also subscribe. That way you can be notified when I have a witty idea or I'm trying something new. I can take you on that journey, because that is all part of my journey for keto. Bye, everybody.